Ghost pots are derelict or abandoned crab traps below the surface of the water. They become abandoned after they lose their buoy or line due to a storm, entanglement with other boat propellers, are rigged improperly, or are vandalized. Organisms stuck in the ghost pot eventually die, attracting new organisms to the trap. This can be a continuous cycle impacting the marine ecology. Ghost pots can also become a navigational and safety hazard to other boaters and recreational users of the bay. Ghost pots can even have economic impacts. If a pot becomes lost, crabbers not only lose their crab trap, but also the crabs inside. This can especially impact commercial crabbers whose livelihood depend on their catch.
Hey everybody, my name is Kaitlin Gannon from the Jacques Cousteau Reserve. Today we're going to talk about how to rig it right. If you use a crab pot like this, a commercial style pot, we're going to go over some things that you can do at home to ensure that your pot is rigged properly and lessen the chances of it becoming a ghost pot or a derelict pot in the bay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about are the bycatch reduction devices. These are also known as turtle excluders. We have 4 of them. They come in a pack of 4, and that's because we need one at each entrance of the crab pot where the crabs enter into the trap and get caught. These bycatch reduction devices just make sure that we don't catch things that we don't want to catch other than crabs. So like terrapins or other marine organisms that could be attracted to the bait inside, go in and get caught. If you are crabbing in certain areas, you actually have to have the bycatch reduction devices on your crab pot. These specifically are areas that are less than 150 feet wide at mean low tide or in any man-made lagoon. You have to have them on your pot. I like to put them on my crab pot either way, even if I'm not crabbing in those specific kind of waters, just to make sure I don't catch any turtles or other marine life accidentally. The other thing that is good to have on your pot is an excluder, or a little hatch that will pop open in case your crab pot does become derelict or abandoned. The marine organisms can still escape. So this is a hatch that will pop open. These metal rings eventually, if your pot does get stuck underwater and you can't find it, these rings eventually will become rusted and then will pop open and making it easier for the animals to get out. The other thing that is specified in the crabbing regulations is a biodegradable escape panel. So instead of this plastic panel in which the rings rust and pop open, you can put a biodegradable panel on top instead, and just like you know what it's called, it will biodegrade after a little bit of time. And that way the animals can get out after this disintegrates. It is made out of plant-based material, which is pretty cool. The next thing to make sure is that you have a proper buoy on your crab pot with your license number. Get this at any bait tackle shop. We tend to see a lot of abandoned crab pots are not rigged properly, and a lot of it has to do with the buoy. We've seen buoys that are made out of sticks. We've seen buoys that are made out of pool noodles, like you can see over here. So this material, even though it does float, eventually will become waterlogged and go down underneath the surface of the water. We also have seen people use other materials such as maybe like old plastic containers, dish detergent bottles. And while it's always good to try to repurpose things and be resourceful, these just don't work. Unlike the buoy here that has the proper material for floating on top of the surface of the water, these will become cracked. You can see there's marine creatures, remnants of marine creatures that were growing on them. The sun, the salt water, eventually will have them crack, fill up with water, and then you can't find them when you go back to retrieve your pot. So not a good idea to use those. Also, something that's really, really important and outlined in the crabbing regulations in New Jersey is that you must have the proper crabbing line, crab line. This is different from other ropes that might have more plastic in them, like these. We have two different kinds of ropes here that are mostly made of plastic or polypropylene rope. And because it's plastic, it will float. So if you have excess line from your crab pot, it's going to float on the surface of the water, and nearby boaters, if they're traveling by your crab pot, they might not see the excess line floating in the water, especially if it's, you know, a dark color like this. And they'll get their propeller caught in it, and then they have to cut it off. Then you have no more line, and then you can't find your pot later when you go back to retrieve it. So it's best to get crabbing line. The rest of it will stay underwater, and only the buoy is showing on the top. So that's really important. And I think those are all the crabbing tips I have for you today to make sure your crab pot is rigged right. Just make sure, you know, before you go crabbing, to go on the New Jersey DEP website, Bureau of Marine Fisheries website, to make sure that you are on top of all of the latest crabbing regulations, where to go, etc. So be sure to do that before you go out on the water, and happy crabbing!